Hello there, beautiful soul. Welcome to my channel and welcome to this video. I'm Mafalda, and today I'm going to dive deep into the topic of ego death and the process of disidentification from the mind. So if you are experiencing a spiritual awakening, you will most likely go through a process of ego death. Usually, and at least in my experience, it hasn't been just one ego death or one dark night of the soul. It's also referred to as that. They have there's been more than one, and they have come in waves. So if you are awakening, it is important to become aware that this process is taking place. So what is ego death? As we awaken spiritually to the nature of who we really are, we start to realize that we have identified with the ego, which is at its most foundational form, our idea of ourselves. And it's a mental construct. That's why sometimes you'll hear the ego referred to as the mind or the lower self or even the small self, even the lower mind. So the ego is a construct, it's a structure. It can also be referred to as an egoic structure in our mental body that's composed of all the beliefs we have about ourselves, all the ways of seeing the world, and our programs, the conditioning that we've been exposed to and that we took on. So that's what it's made up of. And it's quite complex and it has many layers and it operates through the mind. And as we start to realize who we are beyond the mind, beyond the ego, beyond the physical body, we start to realize that we are spiritual beings. We also have to let go of all that which we thought ourselves to be, i.e., the ego. So that's why it feels like the ego is dying, because your old sense of self is dying. Who you thought you were is dying, and it crumbles. And this can be quite a painful, challenging process because all your old conceptions are dissolving and disintegrating. So it is not a linear process, and it can be quite chaotic because as you're becoming aware of the ego, you're also paying more attention to it. You're paying more attention to your mind and your thoughts. And so it might seem like the thoughts are getting louder, and the ego is quite loud. When you start to really pay attention and be able to observe it and identify it, you'll notice that it is quite loud. The soul is actually subtler. So the mind is activated in this process of ego death. You become aware of it. And as you're shedding light on all these thought patterns and these belief systems that quite frankly are rooted in separation, because the ego itself is rooted in this idea of separation, it has to, because basically the ego's function is for you to navigate this 3D reality, this physical reality where we operate in duality. It's not the truth of all existence and of reality, but it's how we operate in the 3D. So you do need a sense of self separate from the other to be able to navigate a human existence. And I'll give you an example of that. My name is Mafalda. That's a part of my ego. That would be a neutral part of my ego. It's just useful to call myself something so that I can identify myself. It is also useful when you actually need to keep yourself safe and you're actually encountering a situation that is dangerous that'll happen in this physical reality. Let's say you're being chased by a lion and you need to feel yourself separate from the lion in order to have your survival mechanism kick in and start running away. You need to perceive yourself as separate so you realize there's danger and you try to keep yourself alive. However, as you know, the ego has completely grown out of proportion. We've identified with it instead of seeing it just as a tool to navigate this reality. And so it really has become quite destructive because it's always trying to cement this idea of separation. Now, we know that separation is not at the core of reality and of existence. At the core of reality is interconnectedness, is unity consciousness. We are energy. Even matter is composed of energy. So you can see how this sense of separation is really just an illusion. And we have to allow our old ideas of ourselves to dissipate as we come into that awareness and as we start to embody that awareness in this physical reality and start to navigate this third dimensional plane differently, more aligned with the truth that is oneness, that is unity consciousness. Now, the issue here is that the ego can be really, really sneaky. So you're never going to outsmart it through the mind. As soon as you start rejecting it or resisting it or judging it, you are coming at it from a mental perspective. And so you're just coming at it from a different aspect of your own ego. The key to transcending the ego really is seeing it for what it is, seeing through the falsity of those beliefs of separation. In order for you to do that, you have to come from a place of neutrality. And one of the ways that I was taught and that I have found also in my experience most useful to do this is by bringing curiosity. Instead of judging the ego and saying that it's bad, because that's just playing into that duality, good, bad, that we live in, right? And that we're collapsing within. That's the collapse of the ego, of that separation, that it's actually two sides of the same thing, right? That's what duality is. So you collapse it inside. So instead of taking a position or judging the ego, you step into the part of you that's beyond the ego. You see it for what it is. You see why it's operating in that way, how it's trying to keep you safe, even if it's not doing so effectively because it's operating from a place of falsity, but you see it for what it is. And as you bring more curiosity and more non-judgment, it starts to lose its grip. And so surrendering to this process of shedding light, and allowing it to die is what's going to allow you to navigate it, let's say, with a bit more serenity. Always bearing in mind that it's not going to be a pretty sight because the ego's going to try to uphold itself and it's going to try to cling onto its old ways and it's going to try to keep itself alive, basically. And it can get really loud as you're becoming more aware of it. So give yourself grace, cultivate neutrality, non-judgment, and allow the process. The more you surrender, the more you trust, the faster you actually get through it. Now, can you get proactive? Yes. And that's what bringing curiosity into this is all about. You can get a bit proactive. So you can start identifying certain thought patterns. Let's say you get a specific belief and you look at it and you're like, okay, don't judge it, right? Get curious. Where is this coming from? Have I thought this before? If I have, when do I usually think these thoughts? And is it a thought pattern? Does it come attached to other thoughts? Because all these thoughts that are based in these beliefs, they'll usually trace back to a core wound, and it'll also be attached to emotion and emotionality. So it's not just a mental process. The dissolution of the ego is also emotional, and it's important to understand that these two bodies, the mental and the emotional, are going through massive clearing and massive cleansing. So give yourself grace. As much as possible, practice curiosity. As much as possible, do not latch onto the thoughts. It's not about saying that the thoughts are good. It's about transcending the need to cling onto or reject. It's transcending this duality of attraction and aversion, because the more you resist the ego, the more you reject it, the more it grows, the more you're actually feeding it. So this is why collapsing these two and coming into a state of balance as you're navigating this is what's going to help and assist you along this process. Okay, I hope these perspectives help. I hope they're useful. Do let me know if you resonated with this, and if you have any questions as well, let me know. I do want to finish off by saying, do give yourself grace. It is not an easy process. It can be quite challenging. It can be quite messy and painful. So always give yourself grace. Trust the process. Your soul is guiding you. If you've been awakened, it's for a reason, and you're part of something greater, of a collective awakening that's happening. So you're not in this alone. I send you so much love to get through this process if you are experiencing ego death, and do reach out if you need more support on your journey. I will be seeing you very, very soon in another video, and I wish you a lovely, lovely day. Much love.